happy-filled world. Shay Bryant here with you. I'd like to say that I am Sovereign Shay, which is the reason that I am on here, is to stay true to the promises to myself and to the talk, making sure that that is what I walk. So yesterday and many days I have been doing an I Am Sovereign Shay social media show, talking about sovereignty within self and sovereignty within source, and that is actually the medicine of the moment. It is going to be the solution energetically that we have to focus on as a species going forward, is sovereignty. Self-referencing universe. It's inside out, and making sure that that is the paradigm that we are in at all times, so that we can in fact be embodied medicine of this world. So that's what I Am Sovereign Shay is about, and I believe it is medicine for this moment, and that I cannot stay quiet about that because it is so apparent to me. And why would you sit upon medicine when you know it has worked for you and you have seen it work for others through your own life and through your business? So I am here speaking to sovereignty as an act of sovereignty. So been doing these I Am Sovereign Shay live calls, and did one yesterday. And yesterday was already just kind of some energetic movement and challenge. It was also Tuesday, which is the day of Mars, the ruling planet being Mars. So, and of course we're in between eclipses, right? You know that. So that makes everything very challenging or just different for empaths and highly sensitives. You might literally feel your nervous system moving and processing lots of energy, lots of trauma, lots of the collective unconscious coming to light. Lots of energy is moving. So that was my yesterday. I went to get some food at a local Indian restaurant that I have been a patron of for probably 6 years. And I had not, splurged, and they had not been open, and I'd been saving my money, and went to get this food and was just getting a carry out. And so I would like to share a little bit of my experience, however fucking uncomfortable this is, because this is quite uncomfortable. I'm shaking now, don't want to talk about this. So I'm talking about sexuality, shame, and sovereignty. And that everything I'm going to say henceforth will probably resonate with half of the species. The female identifying kind does. I'm talking here about sexism, and that is extremely prevalent, and that it needs to be voiced, and that most of the people probably watching this that are female are going to resonate with a lot of what I'm saying to a certain level. I am only speaking for myself. I can only always speak for myself, right? Again, that's one of those hard spiritual truths we need to make sure we're standing in. So absolutely, I cannot speak for another. I am only speaking to my experience as a female. However, recognizing that I do know that this is a very common experience that might resonate with others. And again, in the act of sovereignty. So yesterday this occurred, and it was like the universe kind of, poking me. You know how it does? You know how 2020 does that? 2020 is the year of the giant poke. So yesterday at this restaurant, I was clearly poked on my own sexuality, shame, and sovereignty. And I was like, thank you, universe. Because we don't have to seek out areas in our life to work on. If you just live, right? Life will bring them to you. So yesterday, speaking to being sovereign and processing out one's emotions as well. And that we are in this time of revolution. I mean, we want to, don't we? Don't we want to molt? Don't we want to become better as a species? Well, we are absolutely in that time and in that opportunity. And so being an active participant in that, an activist, if you will, however you would be that. So one of the ways that you can help change this world, one of the ways that you can help heal the racism, help heal the sexism, help heal everything that needs to be healed, because it's absolutely all related. All subjects are related. when they are about domination, when they're about force, when they're about taking and violating from another, right? What's that? That's a paradigm of force. And you know what? Fuck that. We are leaving the paradigm of force and we are entering the paradigm of self-empowerment, which is the highest act of revolution possible. So I talk a big talk, right? So here I am yesterday. I want to give you guys a little bit of history of my own life experience with sexuality and shame. Just a tidbit. Dear God, this is a future book, I guess. I just said that out loud. So, as many of you might have experienced, my amount of times that I have been sexually harassed would be probably in the 10,000, way in the thousands, right? I have also been molested. I have also been assaulted in forms and fashions, including full-on rape, from people that I both know and don't know. So, brief little history there, as I am sure many of you are. So, today I'm going to be talking about harassment, just what one could say was casual sexual harassment. But when you have a background of trauma, PTSD, assault, and rape, then that is going to affect you differently, as might today's call. Okay, so acknowledging where you are in your life experiences, and also acknowledging that PTSD is real, and that will also affect your own reactions, right? Going into a reactive mode of what? Fight, flight, freeze, be polite, whatever your reaction is. So, my history was there at this experience with me, and it affected how I acted. And it also affects what I must forgive, because I also have to forgive myself for my reaction or my inaction. So, very hot topics here. Sexual harassment, shame, going into a reactive mode, as most of us with any kind of trauma, or not even trauma, just being trained. So you probably either had trauma or you've been trained to be polite, to not say anything, to not cause a scene, to not do that, to just take it. It's no big deal. It's casual. He just likes you. Whatever the F you have been taught, right? So, yesterday, look, my nose is itching, right? Somebody talking about me? I'm talking about me. I'm talking about myself here. So yesterday at this, right, let me pause. There was more background I wanted to share of my own forgiving of self and what I bring to the table. So with my multiple assaults and harassment of my life, including the worst one of my life, was actually here in the town that I live in. And when I moved here 7 years ago, I was sexually assaulted at a job interview. And it was so traumatic that it has drastically altered my social living to the degree that I don't date. And I also really dress down. I actually dress nicer for these calls online than I do when I go out. So if you know me, you probably know that I mainly wear pajamas and I wear really ugly shoes. I usually cover up, never wear makeup. Now, is that what we should do? I'm not saying that. Am I proud of that? I'm not saying that. Is that what I do? That is what I do. Would I like that to change? I don't know. Maybe it will. I'm not drawing any judgments from that. I'm just honoring that is my current existence, and it has been for a while. And here's what I have found. Ladies, raise your hand if you feel this. It doesn't matter what you look like, right? You can be in your PJs and your, what are those, Crocs? And you will still be harassed. In fact, not too long ago at a gas station, my, so-called, flirty guy friends at the gas station that see me all the time, asking about my appearance. Why do you always dress down like that? I was like, look, man, look how much you harass me in my pajamas. Can you imagine if I dressed up for you? And the black female co-attendant behind the counter was like, yes, acknowledging. And so I want to pause and acknowledge right now that I'm speaking to my own experience in my white skin. This also does not, sexual harassment and assault has nothing to do with how you look in the sense of how pretty you are, but it absolutely occurs more to indigenous women, mostest, black women, brown women, people of color, women of color, sexual assault and harassment, even more so. So adding racism and sexism to all together in a concentrated, horrific form. So I do want to give voice to that. That needs to be acknowledged in all of this. Okay, so was that enough backstory? So I am in that attire, right? Holding my energy in. Don't show your sexual power. Try not to even be a female. Try to strip yourself of sexuality, right? So that it's not my fault. And so I go in to order a takeout, and the server, the male server, continuously throughout the however long to get that takeout, 10 minutes, harassed me with his questions of, are you single? You are beautiful. Your dimples are so pretty. I'll take you home, over and over again. One time I even said, this is none of your business, when he asked me if I were single. And I gave him the, evil eye, right? And the fury, flames of get the hell away from me, right? Everybody knows that? Raise your hand. Sometimes works. But it doesn't work with creeps. It doesn't work with the men who have the disease, right? It takes more than that. They're not energy readers. They don't care. They don't care that it's violation. In fact, they might be getting off on the fact that their energy is violating you. So I did say that, and I was proud of myself for that. But I didn't say anything else. And I paid for the food. And here's what I want to speak to something about self-violation. So when it came to giving him a tip, I had cash that would have covered it, but then he wouldn't have had a tip. And he even said something. He said, well, you can always use a card. He knew what I was doing in that moment. He was a predator. These exist in all forms and fashions in restaurants. And due to my own history, it was like I was in his web and tentacles and energy again, right? This is what happens when you've had it happen lots of times. So I actually paid for it on a card and gave him a tip. Now I gave him an amount that was equal to a number that made me feel empowered. So I did do that, little win. But when I came home, I was very upset, and I had all of that energy of violation and everything. And so speaking for the rest of this call on, well, how do I process out this and what should I do about it? So I'm not going to speak to, calling out the restaurant or calling him or anything like that. I'm still debating. What right now is coming through is I'm not going to do anything about that. Because you know what? The burden isn't on me to fix that. The burden to fix men is on men. Just like the burden to fix racism against black people is on white people, right? So it is the oppressor that must change, not the victim who must constantly change and speak up and act out and all of the things that is put upon the victim of the oppression. The burden is put upon them. And I know many of you have experienced that. How many of you have said something to authority figures? I know I've gone to the police and been further traumatized by interacting with them. So it's extremely challenging to speak up. And we need to perhaps increase our empathy for others. So perhaps some people who have a harder time understanding racism from a black perspective, well, maybe you can understand sexism because that happens across the board. And it can give you perhaps a doorway into empathy for others who indigenous black people of color experience it far worse than white. But raise your hand if you've experienced it to some degree, right? It is a disease. And I am placing the responsibility on men to step up and to step forth. And good news, we are in a time and in a window when that is happening. And I do see some of my brothers standing and hearing the call and taking a stand. There are men's groups coming together and releasing the toxic masculinity that exists. And it's the men that help keep the system and support it. Got a little heated there. All right, so I did write down some things. Let me just make sure I am staying on target here. So I wanted to just mention that it is about forgiving the self. So there is some forgiveness of myself. Do I need to forgive that guy? Yeah, I actually find it somewhat easier to forgive him. He's just a disgusting asshole who has a disease in him. It's also somewhat cultural. That's not an excuse, but he hasn't stepped up yet, nor have his brothers and mothers forced him to, right? So I can understand all that, and therefore it's easier to forgive him. Also, I have a lot of practice in forgiving men who have sexually harassed me. What I find harder to do is to forgive myself for my own moments of self-violation, meaning when I don't stand up or say anything. Did I have to cause a scene? No, I didn't want to. But looking back on it, I wish I had simply stood up and left. And that would have felt more energetically empowered. What I have to forgive myself for is that I fell under the spell, right? I happen to go into freeze and be polite. And that can be maybe, a challenge if I am sovereign Shay, or you see me very empowered, and many, many, many times I ain't scared to say whatever. But when it comes to sexual assault and harassment, that is when it is far more challenging for me to speak to it and to even feel what I need to do in the moment. And so my healing right now is talking about it, and therefore actually deplugging all of the power that he had in that moment and all of the power that I gave away in that moment. So when I say also forgiving myself, there's also what I call a fallout energetically. And this is something I teach with my clients because I learned this from myself as an empath, highly sensitive, someone who has experienced multiple harassments and assaults in my life. There's a lot of fallout from that. So again, speaking to that sexism is a window into racism. Can you imagine the energetic fallout of when you experience a racist attack, right? So making this bridge of empathy between racism and sexism, and that ultimately this all is related and needs to heal. So acknowledging that if you are heart-centered, if you're an empath, that you're going to have a fallout, an energetic fallout. So perhaps write this down if this resonates. Forgive the fallout. Allow the fallout. The fallout is not something to resist. It is something to go into and make your own. So during an energetic fallout, like having a sexual harassment experience yesterday, it wasn't that intense. But again, women, raise your hand. You know the disgusting, it's like you've been gooed, right? It's like you've been sprayed with their shit. And it's like a skunk spray, right? Stays on for days. It's hard to get off. So once it's energetically on you, it's very normal to have a fallout from that. Now, I also want to speak to that sexual assault and harassment can occur to men as well, okay? So it can occur in any gender. Let me say that. So any kind of violation, let's take all this down to a violation. There can be an energetic fallout from that. And that you might have to forgive yourself for that. You might have to be soft with yourself. And that can be hard to do because anger is there, the violation is there, injustice is there. It can be hard to take a step towards your own heart where you soften with yourself, where you allow yourself the fallout, forgive yourself the fallout, allow yourself every emotion that comes up. So again, this is advice for what we are going through collectively. We're going through an energetic fallout. And if you're more of a sensitive and an empath, and you are attempting to heal, let's say you're trying to heal your ancestral lineage of racism. Either your lineage was affected by racism, killed by racism, or they were the ones that were perpetrators of the killing and the racism. So either way, all of us are in the soup together. And energetically, we're doing some mega freaking seeing, feeling, healing, and cleansing. So this is extremely fatiguing. So, speaking to the fact that doing the self-care, the forgiveness of yourself that you might need, that is one of the sovereign solutions. So after someone has energetically sprayed you, whether literally, figuratively, energetically, if you have been violated energetically in some form or fashion, It's how can I not return to sovereignty, as in deny my fatigue, as in deny my sadness, as in to deny that my nervous system might be affected. We're not trying to deny the trauma. Guess what? You can be sovereign when traumatized. You can be sovereign when shaky. You can be sovereign when crying. In fact, that is my humble definition of sovereignty, is that it is becoming in alignment with yourself, becoming your own buddy, holding your own hand, forgiving yourself, right? That's what's missing. And that's the fastest medicine you can give, is your own self-love, your own self-soothing. So sovereign solutions can be speaking to it, as I am. Obviously, you don't have to do a Facebook Live. Now I've got something in my eye, right? Obviously going through it during this call. So speaking to it in a way that you are going to be held in a sacred space and validated, and recognizing that ultimately it's about you giving yourself that sacred space. 100,000 people could validate you and give you sacred loving space, and you could still deny it. So doing the hard work, the fastest healing, which is, can I give myself sacred space on this? And then also, if we don't do this work, we are going to become apathetic. We're going to become what? Jaded. What are all the words that we use against Black people who seem to have, an attitude from enduring generations of racism? What do we say to women who have an attitude of dealing with generations of sexism, right? We give them labels. So part of that is because it is really fucking easy to get stuck in anger. That's easy. It's understandable, especially if it's happening to you over and over and over again all day long. So it is about being as present as we can with ourselves, as soft as we can with ourselves, as self-sovereign as we can with ourselves, while we are dealing with, the chaos, the deconstruction, the reconstruction, the recalibration, the revolution all around us. And I invite all of us to recognize that our power is within, the sovereignty is within, the connection is within. And by giving ourselves this, we become embodied. We become immune, okay? So I just want to mention the word immunity for a second. And that is unity. Unity is our answer right now. And so nothing is in what I am saying is male bashing or any kind of bashing. It is about accountability and saying that this is the truth for many of us, and that the responsibility and the karma is on all of us. And by giving voice to it, we release so much of the shame. So even in this call, I don't know if you can see my body language, right? I was very tense. I was shaking before. I couldn't even eat any food. And right now I'm feeling light and free. And that's because that mofo who tried to spray his shit all over me, it's gone. It's back on him. And so doing what we need to step back into self-sovereignty and doing this together, all right? So no more on our own. No more in denial of the shit that we might have. It's not so scary when we talk about it, when we admit it. That's our assignment, is to feel it, to name it, to validate it, to ultimately heal it through that process. Thank you for those that watch this, and thank you for those that are taking this to heart. Thank you for those that have experienced sexual assault or trauma and have healed through it. Thank you for those that know that people in your family have been perpetrators of it, or you yourself, and you have healed it and felt it. Thank you for everyone who is trying to bridge the gap of empathy from perhaps sexism to racism. Thank you for everyone that is doing a practice and staying open, male, female, however you identify or do not. I love you. Thank you, guys. Sending love. Whoa.